3, 4. Let me take a look at what do you got. I'm moving to the speculation station a lot. Speculation station.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome to another episode of the Speculation Station podcast with me, Will.
And me, Tom.
I'm the investigator, invigilator.
Interrogator, I believe is the term.
The word I always forget.
Yeah.
And I have brought in a mystery object. As always, one of us brings in a mystery object. The other person, the speculator.
Which I just bullshit about it, really.
We're locked in a room. We don't have an internet. No knowledge other than what's up here.
Yep, that's it.
We do it all in one take.
Really simple. And we've got a bunch of question cards to sort of spice things up, make them more exciting.
Yeah, but hopefully we'll be able to chat shit about whatever comes up. Okay.
Yeah. Ready?
So, today's object.
Ready?
I'm going to get you to close your eyes,
Of course.
usual, right? He's even holding his hands over his eyes, so I know he's definitely got them closed. Super truth. And first of all, I'm going to get you to listen to it. What's that?
Oh, no. Sounds like you're winding something round, like, in this sort of manner.
No, I'm not.
Oh, gosh. It sounds like there's something shaking inside. Oh.
So that is a...
Oh, it's a DVD case.
Right, open your eyes. What DVD is it? Because you can't guess that with your eyes closed.
Up!
The movie Up from DisneyPixar.
I've got it upside down, rather hilariously.
Oh, so the wrong way up.
The wrong way down. It must have been down was the answer, wasn't it?
Please
No?
don't, please.
Okay.
Now,
It's also got a U for its rating.
which stands for...
Universally applicable.
No, it stands for unguent. This movie is the unguent of all people.
Oh, unguent, that common day-to-day word that everyone uses. Oh. So interesting, yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, well, first of all, what do you think about the movie Up?
I thought it was far better than it had any right to be.
Which is often the case for Pixar's output, isn't it?
Yeah, I when hearing about the concept, I was like, doesn't sound that great. But I sat down and watched it, and it was actually incredibly moving. And
Well, it has that famously moving opening 5 or 10 minutes.
yeah, and the end, I think, is equally powerful, but I won't spoil it.
Spoilers!
Oh my god, it's a spoiler!
Hashtag. Why... How come people like Pixar are so successful at making content that's ostensibly for children, but it is popular amongst pretty much everyone?
It's an interesting question. Perhaps because obviously the obvious head aim, if I'm to use that, is they're aiming to, obviously, in order to get children to like something, you're best off getting their parents to like it.
Which is definitely the classic thing with kids' movies.
But there is something to be said, particularly about things like Pixar, where they're not even trying to make it just for kids, they're really trying to make it for both.
Are they trying to make it for humans?
Yeah, and I think that's interesting. And obviously making it open for kids by not having certain themes in, such as sex, swearing, certain levels of violence, all this kind of nonsense, but yet making a movie that is enjoyable, it's full of stakes and tension and excitement.
And, as you say, with this one, it's incredibly moving. The opening 10 minutes where he
Just
loses
all
his
death.
wife, it's incredible. Yeah, dealing with things like death.
Which is something I always have great respect for TV shows for kids or movies for kids that do that. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, and they do it very deftly. They make it seem very easy.
Yeah, and too easy perhaps, but...
Actually, we're going to, before we get to the question deck of
I'm
cards,
excited.
because this also doubles up as an object in terms of it's a DVD.
Yeah.
So have we...
Transcended the DVD?
Thank you for asking the question. Have we transcended the DVD? Or the physical disc media? Have we just transcended that?
It's interesting because I think there's a kind of argument for not quite.
And certainly when it comes to Blu-rays are still very popular, right? As far as I know.
I've never used a Blu-ray,
Nor
I'll admit that, because I'm sure there's a real difference for those who want to view everything in 4K.
There is. And
Absolutely.
I like fidelity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially if you're projecting on a big wall, if you've got a especially large television, or you love movies, I think that is something that you'd probably want to do. But what I'll say about the solid form, it's kind of like the solid form of a book. Mm-hmm. Think about this. We've got Kindles, but the real book still exists and is extremely popular.
Popular as ever.
Exactly. And I've got a feeling that there's something people like about owning the actual... Yeah, we all have Netflix, or yeah, we all have Amazon Prime or Hulu, which is not accessible in the UK.
No, but...
But... we all have these services that get us most of the stuff we want most of the time for free or for a small payment cost, like iPlayer in the UK, BBC iPlayer, fantastic. You can get...
It is superb.
You just get all BBC content whenever you want it, which is exactly what we want.
And some other content.
Yeah,
I think at the moment
sometimes movies as well.
They have Toy Story on there at the moment.
Really? Yeah,
which is
they
nice.
often have old movies on there, I've noted.
And as I was telling you last night, they had, for a brief moment, Peter Jackson's They Shall Not Grow Old, the cleaning up of all that World War I footage. So, yeah.
It's slightly jealous I've missed, but
Yeah.
I'm going to get down to finding a copy of that, because...
The Beeb are great at offering fantastic content.
So
really.
on that note, so we've got all this free, easy-to-access content, but there's something about... If I own it on DVD or Blu-ray, if you prefer, then you have a physical copy and you know it's never going anywhere.
Yeah, and now you mentioned there's something lovely about when they're all sitting there on the shelf or next to each other and you've got these colours and titles and logos and images. It really looks lovely.
Yeah, and it's there's something about it, like the classic, it's not quite the box set, but the box set is called that for a reason, because it comes in a lovely box.
Exactly.
I really love my Babylon 5 box set. It's there. It's got a big 5 on it. I'm like, that's it. It looks beautiful.
You guys have quite a lot of box sets, a lot of sci-fi box sets.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Right?
We often buy them
Farscape,
after we've watched them as well.
Farscape,
Buffy, Deadwood, The Wire.
Oh, some hefty box sets in there.
Yeah.
Jeez, oh. I remember you and I, when we used to live together during and after uni in our big old awful house. It was
that
amazing.
big old Victorian sort of townhouse.
Yes,
effectively.
that was very studentified. But we had, if you remember, it wasn't a DVD shelf or bookcase. It was VHS still back then.
Ah, yeah.
And you often see pictures of this online. You know, we had the collection which everyone has. You've got to have Leon. Also called Leon the Professional, whatever. You gotta have things like Shawshank,
Fight Club,
absolutely, The Matrix, Men in Black,
Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, or Snatch.
Yeah, or some Guy Ritchie.
Snatch is better, by the way.
They're both fantastic.
But Snatch is a better movie.
Oh, speaking of which, Kaz mentioned, I think this is correct, that the live-action Aladdin that's coming out was helmed by Guy Ritchie.
Oh.
Which doesn't make me feel good, because generally when big studios grab Guy Ritchie and put him on something like King Arthur, it doesn't turn out well.
Yeah, it's interesting because did he do
great.
The Man from U.N.C.L.E.? Is that my imagination?
Yes, which was
It was just perfect.
But that was more of a
perfect.
passion project for him.
Yeah.
And I think Sherlock Holmes with Downey Jr. and Jude Law was also more of a passion project, but it was kind of halfway between a big studio
thing and of course the Sherlock Holmes things are probably one of his most fun outings.
Most fun accessible outings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the London gangster oeuvre with Lock, Stock, Snatch, and was there another one of that? There's a few things like Revolver that I like and you don't.
Can't stand
right?
Revolver.
But I like his shtick. I like his...
I'm with you. I think he's very stylized as a director. He's kind of a little bit Tarantino-esque.
He's often been
they're very hype
compared to a British Tarantino.
Kind of, but it's not quite. It's a lot more fun, and I like a lot of Tarantino movies, but I think he's a lot more fun than Tarantino.
And I think it's more reasonably formulaic, in a good way.
Yeah.
You know, Tarantino often throws formula out the window, that's his shtick. But, you know, Guy Ritchie says, okay, there's a good story structure to be had, character arcs and so on.
So I like the topic of movies and where we're at, so maybe bringing it back to something like Up, because it's an animated movie, crucially, and animation today, particularly like Disney, Pixar, any of these DreamWorks, any of these big ones, it's all this 3D animation, which takes it to a whole other level. What do you think the process is for getting a movie like this off the ground?
Well, it can...
How does it even function?
It can
Where
differ
does it start?
wildly.
Where does it go?
With Disney Pixar, you've generally got a stable of really intelligent story creators. I don't know if this is this one, but Brad Bird, one of the big cheeses in terms of Disney Pixar creativity. Let's see if his name is on here. Oh, it's not. So this is Bob Peterson and Pete Docter. So you've got, as far as I know, a lot of these creatives knocking around Disney Pixar. One of them says, I got an idea. And then they see what they can do with it. Brad Bird, now I think about it, I believe Finding Nemo, Toy Story, a bunch of those big ones were his.
That makes sense. So you don't think it's somebody writes a script and then they option it and then they decide to do it?
I think there is a more
There's
creative
a concept,
aspect.
more like the Marvel movies, you say, where it's a planned thing and they hire people to then write it.
No, I say even more creative than that. I think someone goes, I'd like to do X, Y, Z. To be honest, I think that's existed in Disney for a long time. There's a lot of interesting history behind an era of films like the original Aladdin, and Beauty and the Beast, and then latterly Treasure Planet. So
Treasure Planet.
Actually, maybe it's these guys. Maybe it's Doctor and Peterson. These two guys at Disney, they had Treasure Planet in their minds as something they wanted to do, have a sci-fi version of
Treasure Island.
Treasure Island, right? And they went to Disney and said, can we do this? And Disney said, when it's a bit of a shaky idea, how about you do this movie first, and then we'll see where we're at. So they would make movies.
Was it actually Disney, or was it not DreamWorks?
No, we'll go about DreamWorks. That's a whole different kettle of fish. So Disney said, okay, go away and make XYZ for us. And they did, and XYZ became a big hit. And they went back and they said, can we make Treasure Planet? And Disney said, go away and make us blah, blah, blah. And so they go away and they make blah, blah, blah. And that was a big hit. And eventually they said, can we make Treasure Planet? And Disney went, okay, now you can make Treasure Planet. And then it bombed, sadly.
I actually think Treasure Planet was one of the...
We both like it.
Enjoyable movie.
Because
it was just Treasure Island, but with some extra
we like both of those oeuvres. The Treasure Island trope and the sci-fi trope.
Yeah.
And together, I think they work well.
Space Pirates is a classic.
I will say, by the way, so this is all this knowledge I have about this history, by the way, is taken from Lindsay Ellis, who's an amazing commentator in terms of pop culture and knowledge. So if you want to know more about that, go look at Lindsay Ellis on YouTube. You might know her better as the nostalgia chick. She doesn't do that anymore, thankfully. She's moved way beyond that. There's a lot of interesting history around that, for sure. So, DreamWorks, first of all, can you name me any of the big DreamWorks movies?
The Prince of Egypt's the one that strikes me the most.
I would have thought it was Disney, so it wasn't. Okay.
No.
Any recent ones?
The only one that comes to my head is like the El Dorado.
That's not recent.
Is that not recent?
And again, that was pretty good.
Wait, was the one that's the Emperor's New Clothes?
That's Disney as well, I believe.
Oh, really?
Emperor's New Groove.
Emperor's New Groove.
One of my favourites, love that.
Because it's based on the story of the Emperor's New Clothes.
That's Disney as well, I'm pretty sure. So, DreamWorks productions are generally, actually, in terms of the animation community and the animation audience, they're seen as a lower level than DisneyPixar. For some good reason, maybe not some good reason. They've
definitely got their own feel.
They do have their own feel. Back in the day when we were, in our formative years, I think Ants.
Oh, yeah.
Ants and Bugs Life. One of them was Disney, one of them was...
I'm pretty sure Bugs Life was DreamWorks. I might be making that up.
Kung Fu Panda, more recently, I believe, is DreamWorks.
Interesting.
So they tend to do more mechanically accessible, shall we say. There's more evidence of a studio machine making sure
and a straight up simple story.
Exactly.
So
Disney Pixar retains a certain creativity mainly because of Pixar itself. Before they were bought out by Disney, were very, very creative, very strong about their stories, and then after being bought
it seems
Disney,
like a kind of small, close-knit team as well, which is sort of
that's
is
exactly
ahead of
it. So like I say, you have this stable of core people, and you take some and they go, I have this idea.
I can totally see that, because DreamWorks, as I say, I can't remember a DreamWorks movie. I mean, and talking of just Disney in general, I mean, they own all entertainment pretty much.
These days they are signed.
Name something they don't own. Oh, Netflix. But they're trying to kill Netflix now.
I was looking on IMDb the other night. I often go on IMDb's lists to get a good inspiration for a movie to watch. And I clicked on, movies by genre, clicked on action. And it normally does it by kind of recent box office takings and blah, blah, blah. And the top 10, the top 15 majority were Disney properties. There was a bunch of Star Wars in there. There was the animated movies, the Marvel movies.
Of course.
So it's Disney.
Who makes the... Well, we knew we'd end up coming to this eventually. Who makes the DC movies? It's not Disney, obviously.
So it is actually DC themselves, DC Films.
Oh.
If there's a bigger studio behind it, I don't know who it is. It may be Warner Brothers.
Oh, that might make sense. I think it might be.
Right?
I feel like I've seen Warner Brothers coming up before Man of Steel.
Yeah, so certainly the Batman movies are Warner Brothers, so maybe that gives credence to the idea that it's
possible.
WB, yeah.
Well,
okay.
You guys failed.
Sorry, but you did.
Really badly.
And you continue to fail. Aquaman! Okay. Suicide Squad. Okay, we'll go for our question off the deck. This is an interesting one for this, and you can take it whatever angle you want.
Okay.
How would you make this?
Okay, so how would I make this? First of all, I think the biggest thing was to get somebody excited about it. If I wanted to make a big movie, let's talk about it. I think both are actually quite interesting questions. The physical
DVD object,
plus but let's go with the movie angle initially. So the movie, how would I go about making this? I think I'd try and write a really good script.
A good screenplay, yeah.
It probably wouldn't be perfect by any means, but I think that would be the first thing to do. And then I'd shop it around to as many people in Hollywood as possible. I'd probably go to Hollywood and live there immediately.
Keep putting it in front of people.
And I'd just keep putting it in front of people. If that one didn't work, I'd just keep throwing out new ones. And I'd probably come up with 10 scripts for Pixar-like movies.
Oh, I see.
Right? If that was my aim, was to make a sort of Pixar-style 3D animated movie, then I'd really work it. I'd try and shop it out to all. I'd send it to all the people. I'd try and find ways to schmooze with as many people as possible.
Hollywood is half schmoozing indeed.
Well, as is any endeavour that involves the working of people together.
Convincing other people to take on.
It's incredibly door shutty, I'm sure.
Yeah.
On people, but that would be my immediate approach. I'd actually try and make the story and get someone excited about it who could actually do the real work.
A studio exec reads your screenplay, meets with you and goes, yeah, let's do this. What next? What happens next?
For me, it'd be interesting because would you encourage them then to take it away completely and make their own thing with it, or would you want a part in the process? So let's assume I've got a minor part in the process. So I think I'd hope that at that point, obviously, you're going to probably get your hands on a director. They're going to try and find a director for it. And I think that would be the most important thing.
Yes.
Probably you're going to start thinking about get concept artists around.
Yes, and storyboarding.
Storyboarding to hell. And I mean, storyboarding is super fun to try and do, even if you're crap at drawing.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter how good
what
it
comes
is. It's
out.
just a really fun way of coming up with what might appear on screen.
Now, just quickly before we get on to trying the manufacturing of a DVD. So you mentioned, right, that there's a couple of options. Maybe, they say we like this, can we buy it off you and we'll go away and we'll make a thing with it.
Yeah.
Or, you can be more involved in the process. So you're a creator yourself, you like writing, you like making stories.
Sure.
So you write a book, you're really proud of it, in your opinion, it's a great bit of beauty and truth and piece of art. Now,
arrogant too.
Whatever. That's okay. Little creating has a bit of that to it. Obviously, a big success would be to then publish that and have people go, this guy, I like his stuff, he's got a good book. So, if instead a big publisher says, I like this, I want to buy the rights to own this entirely, so once I buy it from you, it's no longer yours, your name doesn't go on it, it's mine, and I get to sell it, I'll give you a whole bunch of money for it, but when this becomes famous, people don't see your name attached to it, they see my name attached to it. Would you sell out in that sense? Or would you sell the idea?
I think it's
difficult.
It really depends on the individual story.
I think it depends on the money offered, to be honest.
Absolutely. That's the other side. Of course, the amount of money offered.
Like 50 million for your story.
But it really depends I think it would depend what it was.
And would it depend...
And whether if I'd written it for the idea of just chopping it out, I don't think I'd... But if you couldn't have any credit, then you couldn't use that on your CV. Then what's the point? Because I haven't even got any personal capital from that.
Well, for me, it goes into the more, I guess, the core of passion about something. So if you're so proud of it, would you be happy to see it go to somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, yes, in some ways. Because obviously, if somebody options your script or your book for a movie and they do whatever creatively they want with it, I think that's fair enough. But the idea that you wouldn't even get mentioned on there and you couldn't write it anywhere that you'd ever done it,
I read just the other day...
That I think defeats the object of doing it in the first place.
On that note, Stephen King was paid $5,000 for the rights to The Shawshank Redemption, which at the time, as a book, was called Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. Obviously, to change the name from the movie. So they gave him a $5,000 check, which he never cashed. Instead, I think he framed it and sent it to the director, Frank Darabont, with a pithy message of, like, if you're ever in trouble, use this for bail money. I don't know if that's a reference or something more specific I don't know about, but there's something wonderful about the idea that he didn't spend that money, it wasn't important to him. It was maybe more of a milestone of success that he'd sold it in the first place.
And I guess £5,000 in the grand scheme of things, dollars isn't a lot.
It would have been, and it wasn't that long ago, so it still wasn't that much money.
I mean, it's still a decent amount of money, don't get me wrong, obviously. I'll take the $5,000, but...
But in terms of legacy, he got to see that story become, what is still considered to be
one of the best films ever.
Often the best film in
at least
the
one of
West.
the most accessible and good films
that almost everyone can watch.
There's no issue with that film.
So let's come in our roundabout circle and tangent.
Yeah.
How the hell do you go about making a compact disc or DVD?
Do you mind if I take this out?
No, not at all.
I will try not to smudge or get anything on it.
Okay, you break it, you buy it.
Oh, thanks.
Very expensive.
So, I'm assuming there's a layer of plastic, obviously, on the outside, and there's a thin layer of metal.
Is there metal?
I think it's like a film of metal. What's the shiny stuff? I'm pretty sure. And then, isn't it... it shows how much I know.
Yeah.
Almost nothing. That it's a layer of... Because I've taken a CD apart before. I'm not a DVD, but a CD back in the day. I peeled it apart and it was just like a thin... almost like really thin
flakes.
foil.
Yeah.
So it felt like sort of flakes of foil. So in terms of making it, gosh, I think you're going to have to know a lot about how hardware works, which I know absolutely bugger all about. But is it in the... How do they actually get the data into the structure of the...
Do you know where the data is on a disc? Like in terms of the actual physical disc, where is the data? Can you point to me? So it's not. It's actually right in this tiny bit around the inside rim.
That's interesting. I
don't know what the rest of it is. If it's just it's
well,
bulk.
no, as far as I was aware, that it starts in the middle and sort of rolls outwards. That's what I'd heard.
No, so it's not. It's right in the centre.
No, that makes sense. So wait. When you burn a CD though, the colour changes as you go towards the outside. You can see where it's been burnt.
That may be a sense of some information is there, but the actual data itself. If you put a film on it, the film's around there. If you put documents on it, the documents are on there. There might be other stuff towards the outside rim.
Yeah, okay.
But as far as and again, this is mere memory / speculation.
You're going to need a fucking good fact. You're not going to be able to make this by hand very easily.
Oh, I like that. Handmade, artisan, bespoke CDs.
Well,
and
maybe
DVDs.
the hipsters will enjoy that, I'm sure.
Just quickly, if CD stands for compact disc, do you remember or know what DVD stands for?
Oh. Digital?
Yes.
Video disc.
See, that's what I thought earlier, and my brain just remembered it a few seconds ago. Digital versatile disc.
Of course!
Yeah. Now, we're going to have another question from the deck, which is asking... When did you first hear about this? You can take whatever angle you like.
When I first heard about DVDs...
As I said, any angle you like.
I remember that very clearly because when they first came out, I didn't have one, but my mate had a DVD player.
Oh, yeah.
So in lunches during school, we used to... we were allowed, because we were at year 11 or 6th form, I don't remember, but you were allowed to sort of go into town, and he lived right next to the school. Just over the road, effectively. Yeah. So we just went to his house and watched DVDs. And DVDs were like this magical idea. And I remember The Matrix being one of the earliest movies I watched on DVD. I was like, oh, this is perfect for DVD because you can like see all the bullets moving and the crisp quality. And
it's so good quality. But also, I mean, a big change wasn't just DVDs, of course, but the size and shape of TVs.
Yeah.
We grew up watching things on VHSs.
Which were fine.
On square TVs where a movie like Up, filmed in... widescreen, something like 2.35 to 1 ratio. It's a nice, long, wide rectangle.
The same shot as the field of vision.
Yeah, what we saw was a little square of that in the middle. So for our childhood, we never saw movies properly unless we went to the cinema. So I guess when DVDs came along, it was a case of, wow, like you said, it's sharp, it's crisp, and you're actually seeing the whole thing.
But a lot of movies pan and a lot of TVs still pan and scanned. Yeah, which is the worst. It looks terrible and really zoomed in, and of course...
Well, like I mentioned to you before,
don't see the full shot.
In America, you watch TV in America, you will see, I guarantee you will see, TV commercials in 4:3 square ratio. And they weren't shot years ago and they're still being used. They're shot recently in 4:3.
But something that really frustrates me on a similar note to that is when shows, particularly old ones, are on 4:3, but people have modern widescreen televisions, they just let it stretch.
Oh, stretching is terrible.
And it looks awful.
Although some shows have the benefit of... Although they were formatted and broadcast for 4:3, they actually were shot in 16:9.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Friends is a good example of this. You can now, when you watch Friends on TV, it fills the screen, it's not stretched, and you're seeing what people in the 90s wouldn't have seen, stuff around the edges.
So you get that little extra bit of Friends that you never got before.
But luckily... it's not like they allowed for it, but there was nothing in shot that shouldn't have been there.
That makes sense.
I did hear recently, however, a Buffy re-edition.
You mean, what do you call it? The digital remastering?
Remastering, yes. And they had theirs in 16:9 because they had things outside the normal field of view. Unfortunately, they didn't account for that when they shot Buffy. So you see crew members and equipment
Oh, what?
in the size of the frame that they obviously thought no one was ever going to see because they shot it in 4:3. So
is that all the way through, or is it just in a few shots, a few key shots? That's interesting.
It's enough of the way through to be utterly unknowable about why they did
That's
it.
apparently
Apparently,
such a
the
shame.
hardcore Buffy community just reacted very badly, which is understandable because you're actually doing it a disservice. You might
Yeah.
as well keep it 4:3 and let people see what you were meant to see.
It's Buffy, it's
It's fine, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Good enough that it doesn't really matter what shape you're seeing it in because you're enjoying the content.
and it kind of, if you're remastering it, you make sure those bits aren't in it. As simple as
Yeah.
that. You just get over the fact that you do.
Yeah, knowing they're there, why release it with that? That's
Yeah,
shocking.
Yeah, and at least, or you just release it and you have a director's cut where you talk about it or whatever, or
That's
or
okay,
a director's
yeah.
commentary where they deal with that fact.
Or
openly.
you do release a special version where you say, look, we've 16:9'd it, but there's some artifacts of our production in it. But if you want to buy it, but they
And it's
remaster it
it's
as like
such
a,
a
this is
shame
the best.
because Buffy is one of the TV series of our childhood, I would say.
Yes, our formative years from
Yeah.
our childhood. I would say,
Yeah. The sort of teenage to early adulthood.
Yeah, which is perfect because it deals with that weird time of your life.
It was so
perfectly.
much fun, so stupid. So yeah, it's perfect for the time. I
Yeah,
think.
it's weird to think of Joss Whedon's journey
Yeah.
from there, which was kind of a cult success, to now where Disney relies on him to make their stuff, their shtick.
I thought you were gonna
Avengers
say
and all that.
shit.
Well, I love
But-
the word shit and shtick. Yeah, he actually wrote, he had a lot of contribution to the Toy Story script.
That doesn't surprise me because of the dialogue, for sure, is very snappy, and that's definitely his skill, for sure.
Snappy dialogue.
Snappy dialogue.
But it's more grounded in Toy Story, which makes it a lot more palatable than some of his stuff, where it's just so quippy that you don't get any sense of a
Particularly,
naturalism.
was it Age of Ultron? Was it just a few quips and some boring fights?
Exactly, so they were
Which
really
didn't really mesh
at odds with
together
each
in
other.
any way.
Exactly that.
So at least for me, that was the worst, I would say, of all those movies.
Yeah, yeah, easily. Okay, so we'll have another question from the deck. Should this be illegal? Is the question. Should this be illegal?
I mean, emphatically no,
why?
because movies bring happiness and nothing but happiness. And enjoyment and spending time with friends, spending time with family, going to
Leisure.
the movies. Whether it's the DVD, which is a nice, handy, useful thing. Now, the only reason I can see to make it illegal if there was some kind of resources problem or you're trying to prevent pollution or littering of DVD boxes or whatever, because obviously, and the production might cause a lot of pollution, so maybe we should have
Yes.
it all digital. That's the only argument I could ever see to even come close. But even then, making it illegal seems like a harsh move.
And making movies like this themselves illegal
Oh, they're
would
just-
only exist in an incredibly authoritarian environment, which unfortunately does exist in some countries.
They do exist where places where music is banned, places where movies of any kind are banned. And there are people who, and there are certainly people who ban their kids from watching movies at all or watching anything.
Yeah.
And obviously there's banning television, or restricting television like we both had as children, a lot of
Yes,
restriction
yes.
on movies and television, but which to some extent was good.
Well, actually, the restriction for me and my brother from my mum was on the amount of viewing time and the time of
The
day
same.
when it was viewed. But as I've said to you before, in terms of the actual content itself, my mum didn't really care what we watched. If it was an 18 rated movie when we were 15 years old, it didn't matter.
That's interesting because I think that my parents were a little reticent about that kind of thing to begin with. But I think I don't think they cared about the topics I was watching.
Yeah, it's just a movie. There's only so much
Yes,
harm a movie can do, really.
No. You can still turn into a well-adjusted person.
Yeah, and the argument that a violent movie will make your kids violent. Well, no, you haven't made your
stupid.
kids properly then.
And the same is with the computer game argument. It's
Such
if
a
anything,
fallacy.
I think there was actually scientific studies proving that the advent of the computer game as being a big thing, the violent computer game, has actually shown maybe not a full correlation or a causative correlation, but a correlation between the time people started playing video games a lot to a massive reduction in violence from probably young men on the streets, I imagine, that kind of thing,
Well,
because they're all inside playing
in
computer
video games,
games,
yes.
killing people virtually.
They'll be having a little smoke, relaxing,
Sure, yeah.
not being harmful to anyone. I mean,
maybe ruining their own lives in some ways, depending on how much they do that. But
I mean, you and I have played and still play a lot of violent video games. And I can safely say that neither you and I have any compulsion or desire or any actual evidence of us ever being violent. Really.
No, not really. Well,
Other
maybe a
than,
little.
You know, we like to punch each other sometimes, but we don't visit our violence on other people.
Exactly, and you only play fighting. Though I'd argue on that account that should you ban play fighting between children? Probably not.
Yeah.
Because they learn, they learn how hard a punch can be. Because if you're never violent as a kid, if you're not allowed to touch another kid.
Sorry, you just use violent as a verb. If you're never violent.
Yes.
Do you mean if you were never violent?
If you were never allowed to, play fight as a kid,
Exercise those,
because then you don't know this punch is too hard or this punch is too soft. You don't know.
Punch is okay with friends.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know whether this headlock is going to be painful.
Yeah.
And so then when you do get into a violent situation, you overblow it and you don't know how to control your anger. So.
Did you used to give each other dead arms and dead legs at school?
All sorts, yeah.
Did you have a special technique? We used to put the two forefinger knuckles out and then punch someone in the arm or leg so it really hits a small spot.
Did you ever do blood sport?
No.
Which is where you get a coin.
Compass?
Coin. And you just hit each other's knuckles with it.
Oh, we did used to do, well, the game slaps.
Yeah, of course.
Where you slap each other's hands. We used to do knuckles or fists where you do it hitting down with the knuckles on the fist. That was horrendous.
Conkers is a little bit of that.
Tell foreign audiences about Conkers in the UK. What is Conkers?
So, Conkers, it's a very, very simple idea. You get a conker, which is essentially what we call horse chestnut. So it's like a big, inedible chestnut.
Hard nut
from a tree. It gets really, really hard. And so the idea is you drill a hole in it.
Yeah.
And you feed a piece of string in with a knot, usually at the end, though you have to be really careful making sure the knot, that part's actually hard and is the most dangerous part because you might break it. And the idea here is you hold it as thus, the other person hangs theirs.
And you kind of hold yours up over your forearm.
Yeah, and you flick it, and you try and hit the other. And the idea is you can continually hit it.
Take turns to hit each other's conkers until one is smashed.
Exactly, and obviously, if yours is smashed, you lose. Whether it smashes when you hit down, because sometimes the attacker, actually theirs breaks as well.
Instead of yours, yeah.
It doesn't really matter. Whoever's breaks first is the loser. Very simple game. There are lots of ways to cheat at Conkers.
Like hardening them with vinegar, I believe, is one.
Which, as far as I can tell, is bollocks. I tried them all.
Oh, right.
I tried shoe polish, which is actually pretty successful.
Oh.
As far as I could tell, I sprayed because it gave it sort of a plastic coating.
Like resin.
I soaked in, and this was fairly successful, but I soaked it in, like paper mache, you make water and PVA glue.
Yeah.
And it's sort of solution of that. I soaked it in that and then let it dry for a long time. So that was quite successful, but I also just did it legit. But the whole point is to cheat, by the way, if you can.
The point is to win. Doesn't matter how you get there,
exactly.
but you win.
But it's actually really controversial these days. I don't even know whether kids might not be allowed to play Conkers as much anymore.
Well, there were a few news reports about it years ago about...
Oh, getting in people's eyes.
Yeah, and the schools are either banning it or making kids wear protective goggles. But I think a lot of that was bullshit. It's the same stuff you get every year around Christmas when the media says, such and such an institution or organisational community has banned Christmas. It's always bollocks.
Sure, yeah.
It never actually happens. And I think Conkers is probably
that's interesting.
still played.
I hope so, because it's a fun game and it's so easy. As long as you have a chestnut tree nearby.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not a conker tree.
Yeah, horse chestnut.
Yeah, but what is the name of the tree? It's math.
Yeah, we had some big ones at our school when we were kids, and so you spent a lot of time picking out. Sometimes big ones are good. Sometimes actually bigger is not better because you need a good density.
Well, it's not about. It's big ones are often a little bit unstable and they fall apart quite easily. We always said because obviously I lived in a village in the English countryside.
Sure,
it was just all the way along the whole streets, filling there. There was one in the back of the school. There was one on my way to school. There was one down the road. This other. So you just had, and you had to sort of pick which was the best tree. And
I see.
There's a lot of choice.
When I was living in Amsterdam, I saw a few of those trees, and in the autumn you'd see, because the Conkers themselves are contained inside those big spiky shells, which are very satisfying to break apart. And I see them on the ground, and I saw big Conkers, and that part of my brain from childhood just says, look for the good ones and pick them up. And then my adult brain says, we don't play Conkers anymore, we don't need Conkers. But part of me really wanted to get the best Conkers, and it still saw them as a prize to be had.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. We're going to have one final question.
Questione.
Oh, it's one of our old favourites. Maybe you can guess what it's going to be.
Should I put it in my mouth?
Yes! Should you?
Or should you, really?
I guess it is should I put this in my mouth, yeah. The DVD case itself is dusty as fuck. It's been sitting on our shelf for a while.
I would damage the DVD itself to put it in your...
Well, it depends how you do it. If I just lock my lips softly around it, It probably won't do
Sort
anything.
of give it a sort of kiss.
If I put my teeth on it, it will make it shitty. It's surprisingly unscratched.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
normally,
impressive. Yeah, they are.
once DVDs spend enough time in your presence,
Well, I
they'll eventually
remember the way
scratch.
you used to keep DVDs.
Which is in a big stack on top of each other. They'd all scrape and grind.
I was
yeah.
never a fan of it, I'll admit.
Yeah, weirdly though, because of that kind of light element, and light's meant to pass through it very easily, if you do have a stack of DVDs or CDs, and you look at it side on through the cross section, you
Quick
actually
off.
see through it. It's pretty.
That's believable,
See
yeah.
through. It's a bit weird as a solid object.
I
But
remember, you get quite a lot of those with those stacks of burnable CDs, when burnable CDs were a thing.
there was actually people, we mentioned the youth not understanding things in previous podcast episodes. There was something recently about someone on Twitter saying like, I'm quite serious. How did you burn CDs? How did that work? How did you put music onto this round disky thing? Obviously the reaction was, oh, you're so young and sweet and we're so old.
We used a blowtorch.
Yeah, literally had to burn them. I think one of the replies was exactly that, a very sardonic reply about using fire.
Put it on the fire.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you've seen CDs reacting to heat, it's not pretty. Well, it is pretty, but it's not good for you.
Oh, I've done it many times. I've broken CDs. Just it's a pleasurable thing to do.
Oh, breaking them is a good way of getting shards in your face.
Oh, but no, yeah, and smashing them in general is a fun. And that's something I did, I think, many years ago when I moved house, when I was just, why do I need these stacks of old
I still have
CDs?
a lot of mine.
I just chucked them all away, and I felt so much better.
It's so hard to get rid of them.
I just got rid of all of them. There's maybe one or two. I've got one book,
Yeah, like a CD
which I've chucked away
book.
all CD
Yeah.
cases for all music and everything I've ever owned. All the boxes, because I never use them. So
you
I just sort
never
of
will.
I kept the actual CD for nostalgic value.
Okay. Do you remember the mini CDs? Not mini discs, but mini CDs.
Yes, I do. Because the GameCube kind of had.
I was going to say some games came on them. Some game demos came on them.
Yeah, and wasn't it? Didn't they try to do a like LP style thing on them, or singles like that?
Oh, that makes sense.
I'm pretty sure I had a
yeah.
single that was that small.
That really makes sense.
What single? I can't remember what it
There were
was.
a few
It
sci-fi
might-
movies of the 90s that
It might have been Eminem who I bought a little CD
interesting.
because I didn't buy many singles. I think
No,
that
I
might have been
didn't.
the only single I bought.
In fact, the only single I ever bought was Buck Rogers by I can't remember what they were called, but it was that song where he goes, drink cider from a lemon.
Okay, I know, I vaguely remember that,
quite heavy
yeah.
actually. The rest of their stuff was Feeder was the band.
Feeder, yeah, no, I know that.
Yeah,
I
and
know
Buck
of
Rogers,
them.
like Blur, who had Song 2. It was like the only crunchy, heavy
There was
song.
a
The
couple
rest
of
of it
good
was
Blur
quite,
songs, but mostly song 2.
Yeah, Song 2, which is down, down, like a down, 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 like a down, down, meow, meow, woohoo.
the Woohoo is one of the best.
Yeah, you hear it on
moments.
soundtracks. Fight nights, walk-ons for fighters. It's a cracking tune.
No, it's one of the best for sure, and it's one I remember from my childhood very fondly. That, along with obviously Castles in the Sky. I'm just trying to think of other good ones from that era.
There was we listened to a couple the other day. Cold as Ice by
Cold as
MOP.
Ice, willing to sacrifice.
Yeah, it's a good sample with good heavy
Yeah,
hip hop
yeah.
beats. Yeah. Well, we could nostalgify for forever on that one. I'm sure we'll get back to that on future episodes. But for now, I think ending on music is a good way because it relates to our
Yeah, so like a soundtrack.
entertainment.
Yeah.
Sure. I can't remember the soundtrack about, but I'm sure it's a classical kind of score, which is
It
very
might not be.
fitting.
He's probably got some funky tracks in there
I
as
don't
well.
think so, because that can really date songs, date movies when you put on song hits of the time.
Yeah,
Like when you watch.
It's a good point.
During Halloween, of course, we watched one of the Addams Family movies,
Oh no.
which are great movies, but they end with
The
like
third one's not great.
and really 90s sounding beats and hip hop. Oh, absolutely awful! It just dates
There was
it.
that age of just having hip hop
At the end of kids' movies,
really,
yeah.
really not good hip hop as well.
Or really-
the worst is when it's a ballad.
I was
at the
about to
end.
say,
and it
saccharine
usually just
R&B or something.
completely like ruins the,
Yes.
the tone and everything of the movie.
Totally ill-fitting. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So,
Pleasure as always. Thank you.
yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Pleasure as always. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening or watching, whatever you're doing.
Yeah, and I hope. Do you like this movie? Do you like other movies? Do you
you-
like movies in general?
And do you still own DVDs? Do you have a DVD case, like a bookshelf
Yeah,
of
is that something you
DVDs?
use? Do you think it's important? What about Blu-rays? Do you think anyone who uses DVDs is a little old hat and should move on to Blu-ray?
Yeah, do you guys use Blu-ray? That's interesting because we don't at all, but they are big
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
obviously you want that extra crisp quality of sound and visual.
And there's a little quiz for you guys. Without looking it up, just like we don't look up things here, do you know what the first released DVD Western film was at all? Because our friend TJ told us that the other day, if you remember. He quizzed us on that. I'll remind you after the episode is over, so I won't
that's
give
good,
anything
yeah.
away to the audience. But we'll see you next time
Next
for another
time.
episode of the Speculation Station podcast. Codcast.
We'll see you next time for another episode of the Wackulation Godcast,
Where we'll take a look at another blistery blobject.
and it'll be a lot of fun. Goodbye.
Until then, goodbye.
Speculation Station.